Welcome to the MMHP in the 989. Channeling all styles and eras of Michigan music history from the city by the bay. And now, here's your host, Scott Baker.
Hey, we're back here at Studio 163 in Essexville. I know, getting to be a wonderful spring here as the summer's on the edge and the trees are starting to bloom and the weather's starting to turn, and we just got through some of those rainy doldrums. And we're all sitting here in the podcast studio. I got Dr. J. How you doing, Dr. J?
Very good.
Sir Fred, how's it going?
Real good.
Good. Real Mike good. Beatty's here in the house. How you doing, Mike?
Oh, good.
Hey, we got the whole team here, and tonight we got a very special guest. This man has written a lot of music over the years that's gone into national records, not to mention all of his own music and his own playing. He's one of Michigan's finest, unique songwriters, and I would say he's got a whole niche coming across from the west side of the state for us here in the east side, because he's been kind of involved with our scene forever here. But we got Mr. Charlie Walmsley in the house. How you doing, Charlie?
Hey, I'm just doing great. I'm having a good time.
We're so happy to hear you, man. You got his keyboard here tonight, so we're going to even get to hear some songs.
If you want to, I'm prepared for that, yes.
Oh, we appreciate that. Yeah. We appreciate that. Let me start by seeing, is there anything new coming up with any fall plans? Because this will come out in the fall, so any fall plans for the Hall of Fame? Any new news that you can add that'll debut then?
Everything's going well at the Hall of Fame exhibit, and I anticipate by the fall we're going to have student groups coming in, which would be a great thing.
Wow, that's awesome.
Yeah, we'll plug into the school systems, and hopefully we'll have a number of trips coming through the museum.
That's outstanding news. How about you, Fred? Anything on the book front or any on the disc front? You got something new on the records out there, I see?
Yeah, I found another Art Shields production, and it's the same one that I bought previously. So I decided to listen to it, because it's LeClaire Reunion or something like that. Mm-hmm. And it's all music.
Oh, wow.
And it sounds like, it starts off with a guy singing, and he sounds like Bing Crosby in the 20s. And then all of a sudden, there's like a Western swing band comes on, and I'm thinking, what is this? It doesn't
almost
sound
like a compilation, huh?
Yeah, I don't know if it was at the actual reunion, and they played 78s or what. I don't.
Oh, fantastic! We'll have to get our
yeah. Well, Shield had a portable tape recording unit, and he would record a lot of different kinds of things like that. Band concerts. He had a big business in recording weddings, where he could bring his recorder right up there and record the vows and the church music, the whole thing. That was a big deal for him. He actually produced a little. It was almost like a cardboard record that he could mail out that advertised what his wedding recordings were like. For the princely sum of $25, you could get a long-playing record, very similar to what Fred has here with the LeClaire Reunion. We've got one, it was the McFadden wedding from 1958 that Mrs. McFadden donated to the museum. Wow. And she also had Shields' recording, which had his voice on it.
Oh, you're saying that in that one episode.
That she saved that. She saved his business card. It was pretty cool.
Wow.
Nice things to have, yeah. Well, I did a lot of digging into the Art Shields story. And,
yeah, for sure.
And that was an interesting, real interesting memento of those years.
Yeah, I don't know if it's Bay City Singers or a band or what. It sounds like from the 20s.
That'll be a great question for the Bay City page, or at least to attempt it on there. That's one we can put on there. That's cool. Well, Charlie.
Yeah.
You've had a hell of a cool last 6 months, man.
It's been pretty exciting the last 6 months, yeah. My friend Larry is getting a break that he so deserves. And it's a great record. And I'm just nothing but grateful that he's carrying me along with him. You know what I mean?
Right.
Having 2 songs on Larry's new record is is I should say Larry McCray. We all know who I'm
Right.
talking about. Is it's a life event for me.
For sure.
It really is, because I've worked hard at songwriting. Most off and on, but throughout my whole life, especially the last 10 years, and it's really.
That's nice.
Well, we should mention your two songs, right? Mr. Easy and Arkansas are the two songs that Larry
Yes.
recorded that you wrote.
Yes.
Yeah, you had a great story about the background to writing Mr. Easy, which I really enjoyed. And I also really enjoyed that little 10-minute, I don't know what I would call it, educational video you did on 12-bar blues.
Oh.
And I was telling Fred that if I was still, I had a rock and roll history class that I taught for quite a few years at Kramer Junior High School in Essexville. And I was thinking, boy, I wish I would have had access to that because you explained it really well. I'm a non-musician and, I've loved the blues, but I didn't really understand, how it's set up. I mean, I've always enjoyed the sound of it. And I thought, gee, that would have been great for the kids because in the class I went back to the roots of rock and roll, which included the blues, and that's just such a very good introduction to the structure of most popular music, really.
Sure. Well, yeah. Thanks, Gary. And that came about because for the last several years I've attended Lamb's Songwriter Retreat up in Harbor Springs in November. And on my way up there this year, John Lamb, who runs the event, called me and said, we have a blues presenter, and he can't make it. Can you do a brief presentation on 12-bar blues? I'd never thought about myself as being an instructor, but I put something together, and I did essentially that bit for all these songwriters, and they all loved it. They said, so, they wanted more. Can you do that again? So I made a couple videos and put it out there.
Now, have you done any other videos in this vein?
I have done one other one. I did that first one, the basic structure, and then I have another one. It's on my YouTube channel, and it's and the next one is chords and riffs or something like that. It's like the next step.
Yeah. Yeah, really, really interesting. And is it short like the other one?
Yeah, it's short.
Yeah, that's another nice
minutes, something like that.
Yeah, it's something that probably I would think, Charlie, you ought to make that available. Oh, I know it would be available, but let like say music teachers know about this because that's something. I'm sure most of them have a computer that they could access in their classes, and that it would seem like that would be a pretty interesting thing to present to kids.
Sure, I'd be I put them on the YouTube channel, and in thinking that the folks who attended the songwriting event might want to see it. So there it is, and I thought if anybody was interested, I might even do a Zoom lessons or something like that, but I don't know how that would work with a piano. But yeah, I enjoyed doing those, and I have another couple figured out that I'm going to do, but I just haven't gotten around to them. But if you find a way to connect me to somebody who wants to see it,
I would think any music teacher in the school system might use it. Again, it sort of depends on their curriculum and how it would work in, but that's pretty basic stuff right there.
Yeah, I tried to keep it short and basic.
Yeah, it was very good.
Sounds like a good tool.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Charlie, take us back to where did this music bug hit you? Where were you at, and what did you do, and how did it come about?
The music bug, there's always music. I went to Holy Rosary Academy, in Bay City, where Mike went to school. And music was part of the daily curriculum. Oh, yeah. We learned the tonic chords and the scales, and I just always loved music. There was always music around the house. My mother would always sing songs.
And some of the nuns were pretty progressive with the folk folk music.
Yeah.
At least when I went there.
Yeah.
That was after your time, but...
Yes, at my time it was mostly, I finally took... I took piano lessons in 5th grade, voluntarily. I came
from Sister
Marjorie.
Okay.
Do you remember her? I took piano lessons in fifth grade because I came home. Piano lessons were available right in school. So I came home and asked my parents, may I take piano lessons? Instead of using the other way, you're taking piano lessons. And so I took piano lessons, and I really enjoyed it. And I would mess around with the melodies, and I would learn the piece, but then I'd write my little version and make it into something else. And then I took the piano lessons throughout fifth grade. And then over the summertime, as a kid, I was fifth grade, what was I, 10? So I'm playing baseball and catching frogs, and went back to school in sixth grade, and Sister Marjorie was there for my first lesson of sixth grade. And I think she was, Sister Marjorie might have been having a bad day. She may have been out of Jameson. I don't know. But she said, Charles, did you practice every day over the summer? And, of course, I was a good Catholic boy, so I was on. I said, no, sister. And she kicked me out. You're out. You're done. And I just accepted it as I was just, okay, I'm done. So I was done with piano lessons, but we had a piano in the house, and I always messed around with it. And there was always music playing. And then my uncles and aunts were always into music, particularly my Uncle Bill I spent a lot of time with him, and he turned me on to Beethoven, and then Johnny Cash and Hank Thompson, and then Bob Dylan. He turned me on to Bob Dylan's first album before I really knew who Bob Dylan was. And then when I was a teenager, 14, 15, I was way into I was into the Beatles, of course. When the Beatles came out, I was in 7th grade, and I loved the music. And then some of my classmates, a few guys and a few girls, were hanging out on a Saturday afternoon downtown. And we were on the corner, it was one of the corners downtown, and there was an older kid with skin-tight jeans, Beatle boots, his hair combed down over his forehead, and all three girls at the same time went, ah, Beatle! And as soon as that happened, that's what I want to be right there. I want to be that guy. It looks kind of like a hood with long hair, with those girls point at him and say, so I quit getting my hair cut then. But then I got into the whole folk scare of the 60s. I was way into the folk scene with Bob Dylan, and so I got a guitar when I was 15, I guess, and played folk songs, and I actually played a few gigs, but I wasn't much of a folk singer. I wrote songs, stuff like that, and then the folk guitar, then I got an electric guitar, and
you followed Dylan right along.
Dylan has been Dylan has been my Dylan is, you got to be my biggest influence, really. Mm-hmm. But I got the electric guitar, and always hanging around with friends playing guitars.
Anybody noteworthy that's still playing right now?
Well, George Heritier has been we have been close friends since 8th grade because of our music connection. Mm-hmm. So we were always hanging around. When we started playing guitars together, we hung around and played guitar. And then throughout high school, George, Mike Cook, Selby Hargett, Scott Shaver, the Draytons we were a pretty organic band because it wasn't like somebody called everybody up and said, hey, do you guys want to start a band? We just always hung out together and played music.
They were called the Draytons.
So the Draytons started when you were in high school?
We started hanging around together in high school, and we were kind of constant companions, and then after high school, we started a band. But in that mix was, of course, a huge figure in mid-Michigan music to me, Sharon Archambault.
Yeah.
We went to high school with Cher, and she was, we started hanging around with Cher. Everybody was always just sitting around someone's living room, playing guitar and singing folk songs and stuff like that. And then Cher was very talented and very connected. And so she would get some real gigs. And so I remember she would have, if there was a piano at the gig, because I didn't get an electric piano till I was 18. But Cher would get a gig, and if they had a piano, she'd have me accompany her. Or she'd get I remember playing the Ginger Blue with Cher, and it was me on the house piano, and it was Mike Cook on guitar, and Selby Hargett on bass, and Cher was the headliner. So you could say that the Draytons started out as Cher's backup band. You know, I can say that proudly that we started out as Cher and Archambault's backup band. Yeah. So that's kind of, that's how I started getting into it, in the early years.
Well, I know these guys probably don't know this, but the Draytons with Charlie were the band at Lynn and I's wedding in 1970. And, that was, I still remember that very well. And the adults were not happy that you guys were playing at the wedding, because it was a little unusual in 1970 to have a rock band playing. Yeah. But, our song is Honest I Do, the old Jimmy Reed Rolling Stones blues song that you guys played.
Yeah.
And that was the song, for the bride and groom dance. So we still appreciate that song. In fact, I gave Lynn a necklace some years ago that just has Honest I Do on it, just as a reminder.
Cool.
Yeah.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, we did quite a bit of Jimmy Reed when George got in the band. I mean, George was always there, but he wasn't officially a member of the band for the first little bit. But yeah, we did the Beatles, and we did Rolling Stones, and we did the band, and we did blues.
Right.
And it was kind of like that.
Yeah, I didn't know if you got Honest I Do from the Rolling Stones or from Jimmy Reed, because I had first heard it on the first Rolling Stones album.
We'd heard it there, but George listened to Jim. When George joined the band, George brought a lot of blues. He brought a big blues element into it. He was way into the blues back then. Mm-hmm. And he was the first person that played a Jimmy Reed record for me. And so when George joined the band, we started, he was into Howlin' Wolf and Jimmy Reed and all these, harmonica players. And
right.
Yeah, so it was actually Jimmy Reed is who we were listening to. We did that, and we did what's the Baby What You Want Me to Do, which was actually Baby Why You Want to Let Go. If you listen to the words, they're singing Baby Why You Want to Let Go, but somehow whoever was writing the album notes said, I think they're saying Baby What You Want Me to Do. So now if you jam that song, you're singing harmony with somebody, the other guy's going to be singing Baby What You Want Me to Do. Oh no, it's Baby Why You Want to Let Go.
Wow.
Yeah, it's too bad you guys didn't record anything, because I really thought you had a great little band there.
We had plans for that. We had big plans to, we had lots of original material. Everybody in the Draytons wrote songs, and everybody did. And we had lots of original material, and we were raring to go. We just show us where to go, and we signed up with a booking. Well, we had this. Can I go on about the Draytons for a little bit?
Yeah, sure. I'm curious, did you have any interaction with Bill Kehoe at all and Delta Promotions?
We did. We did. They booked us for a few gigs, and then at the time, Delta Promotions was doing this thing about they would somehow acquire the name.
Oh, yes. The Fake Zombies thing.
Of a defunct band.
Right.
But they were good bands. I mean, the Fake Zombies were a really good band. But anyway, so they proposed to us that they acquired this band called The South, which was kind of a country rock. And we kind of fit that. I mean, we did some country stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So they proposed to us that we change our name to The South. We learn all the songs from these two records, and they have these tours booked for us. And I wish we'd have done it, but a couple of the guys didn't want to do it because we were we're the Draytons. We don't want to be somebody else. We don't want to pretend we're somebody. And they said, you still write your own music, and all your new stuff is going to be yours, but we want you to start out with this bass. And it wasn't a famous band, so it might have been a really cool opportunity, but we didn't do that.
Well, they got into big trouble because they put the Archies on the road and got slapped with a bunch of lawsuits.
Yeah.
And that kind of... they pulled the plug on Delta Promotions.
That story was in the Rolling Stone.
Yes, very much so.
Front page, Bay City, Michigan, right?
You bet.
Yeah. But the Draytons, we had this sort of attitude. We kind of had an attitude. It's probably why you liked us, Gary.
Yes. You had the rock and roll edge going.
If anything, if a song was so popular that every band played it, we wouldn't play it. We weren't going to do that. Even if we loved the song, everybody plays that. We're not going to do that. And so I remember George says that somebody came up out of the audience at one gig and said, "Do you guys do anything other than B-sides?" Which was a very apt question. And we had another little quirky thing we had. If we were ever misbooked, and everybody who's a musician, sometimes you walk into a room and you say, "Oh my goodness, they're not going to like us here." If we were misbooked and we perceived that the audience was going to hate us, our strategy was we are going to open up with the song that they are going to hate the most. And it turned out really good. There was a VFW hall or something up in Tawas, so we got a booking there. And it wasn't 19-year-old rock and rollers, it was 40-year-old polkas people. And we looked at that crowd and we thought, like you said, the adults weren't happy at your wedding because he had this hippie rock and roll band. So we thought, they're going to hate us. What do we open up with? Well, we decided we would open up with our one and only MC5 cover, Ramblin' Rose. Remember that?
Yes.
Maine Kramer sang it,
right.
And I sang it in my best falsetto. Love is like a rambling rose. With that, because we're not a heavy hitting band. We were pretty much on the mellow side, know. But so we opened up with that song, and not only did we open up with the song they hated most, but we played it with a fervor, like, "Here you go, how do you like that?" The dance floor filled up. They loved it. They just loved it. And it's like, oh, okay. and then another time, the time we hooked up with our booking agent, we were booked into a multi-act rock show at the Golden Globe Ballroom outside of Saginaw somewhere.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
Yeah.
And the band before us was a head-banging power trio, which were popular at the time. It was like the antithesis of the Draytons. And everybody loved them. Everybody was out on the dance floor doing the head-banging. I don't think... We didn't dance then. We just jumped around and banged heads because it was a head-banging power trio. And we looked at how much they were enjoying this band that was just the opposite of us. And we said, well, they're going to hate us. What do we open up with? So we decided to open up with our drummer, Scott Shaver, rest his soul, did this really great baritone raspy version of Hank Williams' "Your Cheatin' Heart." And we kind of boogied it up a little bit. But after this power trio, we opened up with "Your Cheatin' Heart." Sorry, folks, we're just a country band. And they just loved it. They went nuts.
Wow.
So my tip for young musicians out there is when you're misbooked, you start out with a song that you think they're really going to hate, and you might be surprised. Anyway, but we hooked up with after that gig, there was a booking agent there from Escanaba, Michigan, a guy named Gene Smeltnick, great guy, and he wanted us, and he had contracts, and we're all we'd been drinking and smoking and everything, but in the back seat of somebody's car, we signed all these contracts, and he started booking us Northern Lower Peninsula, Upper Peninsula, Wisconsin, Ontario a few times. And that we played a gig in Ontario in late summer of '72. It was in Sault Ste. Marie, Ontario, and it was a 2-night bar gig, and we didn't have a Thursday night gig, so we were going straight from Bay City to Sault Ste. Marie. So let's say we're supposed to leave at 3. Somebody was late. We got a late start. We're all ticked off because we were late. We get up to the customs, and back then, I don't know, maybe they still do it, probably do. When you're taking equipment into Canada for work, somebody has to put like a bond or like a refundable tariff on it. So the bar owner has an account with customs, and he had to put up $300 so we could bring our equipment into the country. So we fill out a form, and then we have to voluntarily stop at customs on the way out and show them we still have the equipment, and then the bar owner gets his money back. So we go up, we're at the counter at customs, and I look at the clock, and instead of whatever it is, instead of 6 o'clock, it says 7. I said, this is 1972. I said, sir, why does your clock say 7 o'clock? Oh, we're on daylight savings time here in Ontario, young man. And if you look up when did Michigan start daylight savings time, it'll say 1972, but 1972 is when we voted to observe it. We didn't start observing it until 73. So not only were we already late, now we're an hour later. So we got to the gig late, hurried up, set up. Instead of starting, if we were supposed to start at 9, we didn't start until 9:45 or something like that. Played all, we played, we might have taken one little break to make up for it. We did great. Crowd loved us. Everything went well. The bar owner loved us. He said we were great. Played Saturday night. Had a great time. Time to go. We're packed up, ready to hit the road. And Mike Cook goes in and deals with the bar owner. And he says, Mike comes out and says, we only got half our pay. What do you mean we only got half our pay? I said, we were late. He's not paying us for Friday night. He said, look, I explained to him, we played through the night. We had a great crowd. What's the deal? And he opened, the bar owner opened up his drawer. Mike said, opened up the drawer, set a gun on his desk and said, if you want to argue, you can argue with this guy. And he said, don't burn me at the border. You'll never play in Canada again. So we're all ticked off and we're arguing back and forth. We're going to burn them. No, we're not. We better not want to. No, we're going to burn. So we got to the border, and you don't have to go to customs when you're leaving a country unless you want to, unless you have some business to do. So we would have had to stop and say, oh, by the way, here's our equipment. We burned them. We burned that stupid bar owner. And then after that, we didn't play. Our agent let us know that you're not playing in Ontario anymore. And our agent was mad, and everybody was mad. And that was kind of the beginning of the end for the Draytons. That's how I trace it back. Like after that, everything kind of went south for us, and I don't know.
But then you started working with Cher Archambault.
I worked with Cher Archambault before, after, and during the Draytons. Yeah. Cher's been a good friend Cher was a good friend for a long time, and she was so well connected. There's the real shame that, to my knowledge, there's no recording. She doesn't have a studio recording. I mean, I always thought Cher was going to be a big star. She's so talented.
Yeah, I saw her open at Pine Knob on one concert. Yeah. I'm trying to remember who she opened for. I don't know if it was Seeger or...
I think it was Bob Seeger.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, she got those kind of gigs. I mean, yeah. And the guy I played a band with in Ep5, Frank Youngman, he had a gig with Cher in Lansing, opened up for Tom Waits.
I was there.
Oh, okay.
I saw it because we went to see Cher because she was opening up for Tom Waits.
Tom Waits, yeah.
And she was great.
Oh, she was great.
It was a hard act to follow, let me tell you.
Yeah.
Tom Waits, of course.
Of course, Tom Waits, yeah. Yeah, I saw Tom Waits follow Jerry Jeff Walker down at in Michigan Theater in Pontiac or something like that. I don't know. It was in the late 70s. And I was a huge Tom Waits fan, and I was a huge Jerry Jeff Walker fan. So to me, it was great. But a lot of people said, how do you get these two together? And so when Tom Waits came on, there's all these Jerry Jeff fans with big cowboy hats shouting, Tom who? And Waits came out and he looked at him and he said, E-I-E-I-O.
That's funny.
I'll never forget that. Anyway.
Did Cher have a manager?
Off and on she did.
Okay,
You know,
yeah.
she was
hard to manage.
Yeah,
Anyway.
she may have been hard to manage. She kind of moved down to the Detroit area. She was well connected there. And I believe she did have a manager that booked her. And yeah, I don't know.
We recorded her a few years ago with the Gilmore Brothers.
Oh, you did?
Somebody's got the tape.
That photograph that you sent me?
Right.
Yeah. Yeah, I'd like to hear that.
I don't know who has it, but I know it was the whole night was recorded.
You could do one of these on Sharon Archambault, and you know you'd have you'd have to fill the room with folks that knew her to get the whole story. But yeah, you really could.
Wow. So what went on after the Draytons?
The Draytons. After the Draytons, I kind of had a blank period there where I did various one-off. You know, let's throw a band together to play this gig. Let's do this and do that. And I moved to Mount Pleasant, and the next band was Spice. I was invited to join this working band called Spice, and they were rock and roll. You know, they were a variety band, but mostly a rock and roll band. And they played every weekend. It was mostly weddings when we first started, and then we ended up playing more bars and stuff like that. But yes.
Where did the Bluegills come in?
The Bluegills were like, let's see, I tried to write down some dates here. The Bluegills were like 94 to 98, so there were a few in between there, but yeah, the Bluegills were...
Because Larry McCray recorded with you.
Yes, Larry McCray recorded that much maligned Meet Me at the Lake record.
I've got that.
I do too.
Yeah, which is I mean, there's a story there. If you,
we'll get to it. I was going to have you walk through your history here.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, after the Spice Band was Lori Brooks, vocalist, Mike Hendershot on guitar, Fred Taylor at bass, Rob Clendenning, whom I've played in several bands with over the decades. Rob plays in Crazy Chestur. So I started playing with Rob in the late 70s, like 77. And then later was Paul Fish and Jeff Bosley. And we started out as a variety band playing weddings and ended up as a rock and roll band playing bars and wanting to make it big. And we played a bunch of original stuff. And there are some recordings somewhere. Actually, the Spice Band played some of the Drayton songs. They played I Ain't Got a Dime, which was like the Drayton's greatest hit, which I might play for you later.
Oh, cool.
So, and then after that there was the No Brand Blues Band. After the Draytons broke up, my friend Brian Hobbs, who lives out in Vermont now, he was a fine bass player, harmonica player, singer. He wanted to start a blues band, and it was Brian. It was Jim Gilmore, who now plays in Crazy Chestur. It was Rob Clendenning again. It was Dave Schaefer on saxophone, and Lori Ludi was the lead singer. And then Lori Ludi ended up, she was my wife. We got married, and Lori Ludi and I wrote, I guess, all the songs for all the original songs. She wrote her stuff and I wrote my stuff. We didn't do stuff together, but wrote for the Bluegills. And there was Pepper Pie, which was more of a pre-war jazz and blues. I think that was the stuff we did, and we had a record. We put a record out that was actually a pretty decent record. Dan Bracken recorded it in our living room with an acoustic piano, and we had a fabulous jazz guitarist named Earl Haynes. If you read the story about Mr. Easy story on the website, that was Earl Haynes. That was Mr. Easy.
Oh.
Mr. Easy wasn't me.
Right.
It was inspired by Earl Haynes.
Yeah, Earl seemed like quite a guy. Quite the ladies' man.
He was just a very charming guy, but he was very independent. He just wasn't going to, he wasn't going to change his lifestyle. He liked to play guitar and drink Budweiser and hang out with his friends, and that's how...
Did he have a band in Lansing, too? Because there was a Mr. Easy or something, blues band.
No, Earl never went by the name of Mr. Easy.
Oh.
That was just the song. That song was inspired by his whole attitude toward life. I came up with that Mr. Easy thing. I don't even know if I ever told him about that song. And it's funny because Larry and Carl and Steve came over to Coldwater Lake, and we did a demo of that song in 1999. And now, 22 years later, Larry records us. We songwriters, we plant seeds.
Yeah,
that's right.
Absolutely.
Just needed to percolate a while.
Yeah.
Yep.
And somewhere in Pepper Pie, I got involved with Larry McCray, and I started playing with the McCray Brothers band. And the connection to Larry McCray was Sharon Archambault. Sharon Archambault called me up. It was, I think, 1987, and said, "I'm having a party at the house. We'll be jamming. Bring your keyboard." And she said, "There's a good blues band from Saginaw that are going to set up." So, the McCray Brothers, and I had heard of them. I heard that there was this up-and-coming, really good blues band. And I was way into the blues in the 80s and 90s. So I said to Sharon, so what do they do? What kind of stuff? And she said, well, they do Chicago blues and the standards. She said, but they do a lot of Robert Cray. Well, at that time, the Strong Persuader album was popular, and it was on my turntable about every day. But when she told me I was invited to come and jam with this really good blues band, they did a lot of Robert Cray, I sat down with that album and I learned every change, every song, every riff, every stop, everything. So when went to Cher's party and the McCray Brothers were there, which was Larry and of course Steve on drums and Carl on bass, and they had Dennis and Danny Lewandowski saxophone, and I sat in with them, and they did at least 6 songs off that Strong Persuader album, and every one of those songs I was on every change. I stopped at every stop. I was every fill. I was on it. So Larry said, "Man, you fit in here just like a puzzle." And so, like 3 days later, Danny called me up and said, "Hey, man, you want to play some gigs with us?" So I worked my way into getting into the McCray Brothers band, and then so we did gigs with them.
What year was that?
That would have been 87, 88.
Okay.
And I played gigs with them until Larry's Ambition album came out. When Larry got his record deal, then the McCray Brothers more or less broke up, and it was just Larry in his band.
Yep.
So my first gig with those guys, I think, was at the Michigan Festival, opening up for the Kinsey Report. So that we had some great fun with those guys.
In 1987, I booked the McCray Brothers to back up Lester in Chicago.
Chicago Blues Festival. Yeah,
and they brought Mike Brush as the keyboard player.
That was before. See, so it was later 87 or 88 when I started with them, because I didn't do that gig. But after Cher's party,
right,
I think I was their main keyboard player for a while. Yeah. Yeah.
Excellent. So Larry takes off on tour. What did you end up putting another band together?
Oh, yeah, then it was, the Bluegills came shortly after that.
Okay.
You know?
Then he came home on break and cut a record with you guys.
Yeah, that was, you know, the Bluegills was, it was Laurie and it was Jim Gilmore and Rob Clendenning, who are now in
Crazy Chestur.
Crazy Chestur. And it was Jim's two very talented sisters, Kim and Kelly Gilmore, Kim Stegman. I teased Rob, you know, because Laurie and I were married at the time. I said, Rob, what are you thinking? Getting in a band with a married couple and 3 siblings? Are you nuts? Anyway, so we had this band and we did a lot of original music, and we made this little record. We went into the Steve Gilray's studio out on Coldwater Lake, where I live now. I look out my window, I can see that old, what used to be his studio, with Dan Hubble at the control board. And we recorded a record, and we made a CD and had it manufactured. And I had the Living Blues directory of all the little record labels, you know. And I sent that record out to, I don't know, 20, 30 record labels. Like really, you're really going to do that? Like that's going to do any good? So I get a call from a guy named Doug Myron out of Minneapolis, who owns Atomic Theory Records. Atomic Theory Records, which originally belonged to Willie Murphy. Willie Murphy out of Minneapolis, who produced Bonnie Raitt's first album. That was where Bonnie Raitt first recorded. Yes. Anyway, he calls up and says, hey, I got your record. I like this. I think I want to distribute it for you. Well, yeah, that's great. Let's do it, you know. And so we developed this agreement. He's going to distribute our record. He distributed through Rounder, you know. So are you guys ready to tour? And some of the members were not really ready to go out and tour, but we said, you know, we'll play some gigs. But anyway, so we got this kind of tentative record deal. Now Larry McCray was our buddy, and he would come around and we'd go fishing, and we'd come back to the house and we'd fry fish and drink beer and play music. And he came out to Steve Gilray's studio and we were just hanging out and jamming and partying, and Larry came out and we jammed together. And of course, Dan Hubble sat at the board and recorded it. So we ended, and we might have played 1 or 2 Bluegill songs during that session, but it was mostly, we mostly played blues. We mostly just jammed. And so Dan made us all tapes, and we got Larry a tape. So Larry's got the tape of this jam session with the Bluegills. Larry went out and did a gig in Minneapolis, somewhere between Minneapolis or St. Paul, and Doug Myron, the Atomic Theory record guy, they got to talking, and somehow it came up about the Bluegills. And Larry said, well, I was just jamming with those guys. I got a tape, you want to hear it? So he gave Doug Myron the tape of us jamming together. Doug Myron then calls me up and says, hey, I still want to release your Bluegills record, but I want you to make, I heard this tape and I want you guys to make a record together. You think Larry will do it? Well, he talked to Larry and I talked to Larry, and so we're going to make a record together. And, you know, the record was not, I mean, you know, the record has some good songs on it. It's just a little bit, there were some issues with the record. The title of the record was supposed to be The Bluegills with Special Guest Larry McCray. That's what was agreed to. But when it came out, it was Larry McCray and the Bluegills, okay? So back in those days, when there were actual record stores, if it was the Bluegills with Special Guest Larry McCray, it was over in the B's. And you could only find it if you were looking through the Bluegills stuff. But it was under the M's with Larry McCray. where it shouldn't have been. You know, because whether you like the record or not, it's not representative of a Larry McCray record. It's a lot of female vocals, and the mix is high and hot and not low and heavy, and that's partly my fault, because the first mix that Dan and Steve gave to me to give me this tape, and they were just going to show me kind of what sound they had, and it was all bass and drums. And I don't know if I was not in a good mood that morning, maybe I didn't have enough coffee, and I left them a note, and I said, "This is the Bluegills, not Foghat." And and so I might have ticked somebody off, you know. And so the mix was really high, and we were under a deadline. You got to get this record in by July 15th, because nobody releases a record after October 15th unless you're a huge star. So we got to have it by, and so we cracked the whip and got the record done. And, you know, we had fun making the record, and there's some good stuff on there, but there were a couple things that didn't turn out the way they were supposed to turn out. And we got some really good reviews and then some bad reviews. And I remember blues disc jockey guy down in Kalamazoo. Can't remember his name, and I wouldn't say it anyway, but he was promoting this Larry McCray gig after Meet Me at the Lake came out, and he promoted it as Larry McCray in parentheses without the Bluegills.
Wow.
So and then it didn't bode well for my relationship with Larry's management at the time, you know, because I was the kind of responsible party, and it was you know, it was a black mark on Larry's record.
How did it fare up against Point Blank's stuff and all that? I mean, were they coming at you too, since they had Larry?
Oh no! I mean, you mean to Point Blank?
His record company, Virgin.
Oh no.
Okay, it was just Paul and.
Yeah.
Okay.
It wasn't any. There wasn't anything beyond just Larry's personal management. Yeah.
So the record company it didn't matter to them. They didn't think about it at all.
No, and I think it was.
I wonder, because I have Paul and Larry are my neighbors forever here, so it's like I've heard just about every story, but I never heard about any record company issue, you know, with that.
Well, he was beyond Point Blank then, because by the time this came out, I think in
he had the
95 or 96.
He was on the House of Blues record. Yeah. And
it was before the House of Blues record.
Mm-hmm. He was in between.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. He was in between.
That's right.
Yeah. And so, but, you know, the record sold, and, you know.
Yeah.
It was okay. It's out there.
Yeah.
So we had our records released, which was kind of a big deal.
That's wonderful. And you kept the Bluegills going long after that?
We kept the Bluegills going. The Bluegills were from, we broke up in 97.
Okay. Oh. What were you doing after that then?
After that, I was playing with the Mike Rise band. Mike Rise is a he is a great rock and roll guitar player and singer, and he is one of the few musicians I know that, and he's like maybe 2 years younger than me. He has had a day job for maybe a total of 2 years in his whole life. He has made a living playing music, and for the last 20, 30 years, he's played music on Mackinac Island. If you go to Pink Pony at night, you're going to see Mike Rise up there behind the bar. And he's just a fabulous guitarist and singer, great guy. Anyway, I joined Mike Rise band, and we were playing at mostly Horns Bar. We played, 6 three-night weekends up at Horns Bar in Mackinac Island. We were just playing classic rock. You know, at that point, I let the songwriting thing slide for a bit, and I was just happy to play for a bunch of drunks on Mackinac Island. I mean, it's a great place to play. Nobody's worried about driving home. Everybody's having a good time.
Right.
We're playing their favorite songs, and we're playing. You know, it was Mike Rise, it was Only Worth, it was Bill Newland on drums, and me on keys, and then sometimes we had Lance. Lance would play. We had, various players would come.
Did you say Only Worth?
Only Worth, yeah.
Oh, I knew him in Ann Arbor.
Oni's a great player and a wonderful guy.
Oh, yeah.
I haven't seen him in a long time, but yeah, Oni was in the band. Yeah,
Huh.
it was a great band. I mean, one of the great classic rock band.
Well, he's a well-respected bass player down in Ann Arbor, Detroit area.
Yeah, he was in the Map of the World.
Right. We recorded him.
Yeah. Oh, you did. Yeah.
School Kids Records.
Yeah, School Kid. Yeah. Oni. Yeah.
When did you start your writing career?
My writing career, I started writing songs.
Well, I mean, I guess you could say a novelist, right? Would be your...
Oh, you mean this stuff? Oh,
right.
Oh, the fiction.
Right.
Some friends persuaded me that the story of this legendary hippie house / crime syndicate in Bay City back in 1971.
It's a great story.
That this story needed to be told, and somehow I was elected to write it. So and this was 2019. It's 2019. I went to visit a friend in Florida that I got to be friends again with, named Dennis Carter, and we sat after we went out with our wives, Dennis and Linda, and Melinda and myself went out and had a great time down there in Florida with him in St. Pete. And after dinner, Dennis and I sat outside his garage and drank whiskey. We talked about that hippie house that we were allegedly involved with, and we talked about the story and this and how this is really. We started out as just a bunch of innocent, fun-loving, with a little bit wild hippies, and ended up like 6 months later is like a crime syndicate. How did that happen? And then a year later, everybody's got day jobs and married, and everything went back to the. But so. And then Dennis passed away shortly after that, and I started writing the story. After that, I started writing this story and interviewing friends, calling friends up. Hey, what happened that time with this caper? What happened with this? Remember that? And so I interviewed several people. I started compiling this book. It was only like 45,000 words, and as a reference, the Great Gatsby was 47,000, which is considered the shortest great novel. So I was, well, if I can at least get close to Great Gatsby, you can call it a book. So it was 45,000 words, and it wasn't well written or conceived or put together, but it had all these little vignettes in there. But when I was done with that, that process of getting up early in the morning, my whole creative process is mostly early in the morning. I just wake up, and before my brain connects with email or Facebook or the news or whatever, I have a cup of coffee and I'm looking at song lyrics. Well, now I was looking at the story, and I'd wake up, I got to write this chapter. And when I got done writing that book, it was all done, I had this big gap. Like, I enjoyed that so much. I got to write something else. So I came up with a concept for Visiting Uncle John, and I started writing that. And
How long was that first book? What was that gap like?
What was the title of the first one?
The first, it was Hartford House, and it's not a novel. It's more of a sordid memoir.
Memoir, okay.
Wasn't it by Carroll Park or something?
Carroll Park was involved because that's where
Right.
we hung out, in Carroll
Right.
Park in Bay City. That's where we hung out, and the house was on Hampton House, on Hampton Street. I changed the name to Hartford House. Everybody's, the names were changed to protect the guilty. But then after that, I just loved the process of writing so much. I mean, I started writing in 2019, and I've got, 2022? I've got 3 novels published after that. Right now, I've got one started, but I'm more right now back into the song thing. So right now, it's song lyrics.
Okay.
Every day, I'm looking at song lyrics. Yeah.
Well, before you give us some more story on the song lyrics, how about some songs right now?
Oh, sure. Yeah.
It'd be great to hear some of your songs, and then we'll see what else we can bring up there afterwards.
You don't mind if I start with a cover song? Because there's a song that I always have to play. So you have to hear it, because I always have to play it. Yes, babe, I've been drinking. And I shouldn't come round, I know. But I found myself in trouble. And I had nowhere else to go. Got some whiskey from the barman. Got some cocaine from a friend. And I had to keep on moving till I was back in your arms again. I'm guilty. And I'll be guilty all the rest of my life. How come I never do what I'm supposed to do? How come nothing I try to do ever turns out right? You know how it is with me, baby. Sometimes I can't stand myself, and it takes a whole lot of medicine for me to pretend I'm somebody else.
Nice.
Guilty by Randy Newman. That's just one of my favorite songs to.
It's a great tune.
I always do it. So I can play that Drayton song.
Yes.
I actually went through it this afternoon because I thought, do I even remember that?
Would you have played that at our wedding?
Oh, we played that. That was our biggest, yeah.
Okay.
We
All right.
absolutely played that.
Let's see if this brings back memories.
Okay.
Make sure Lynn sits down and listens to this.
It's called I Ain't Got a Dime. I Ain't Got a Dime. And actually, some other bands played it. Buffalo Chips later on, George was in that. They played it. There was another band in town played it. And anyway. Whatever you ask me, that's what I'll do. Whatever you want from me, I'll give it to you. Why don't you come over
Excellent.
Oh, yeah. I can imagine Levon Hill singing that with the band.
Oh.
Yeah, that's a great tune.
Oh, thanks, man. That's great. I'm wearing this is my Mojo hat that Levon gave me. I wear this hat for special occasions.
Wow.
Ah,
There you
I'm
go.
glad you mentioned these.
So, did you write that, Charlie?
Yeah.
You would by yourself, or
Yeah.
Wow, that's a real nice tune.
that's awesome. What else you got over there?
I got
something new, like
recent.
yeah.
I released a couple of singles. You know, when I release a single in my own name, it's really a pitching demo. I'm not trying to be a recording artist. I just want somebody to hear it and say, "Oh, we ought to recover that." You know. So, but this is one.
So, has anybody ever recovered that one? I Ain't Gotta Die?
Well, the Draytons played it. Buffalo Chips played it.
Yeah, but I mean, anybody put it out on record? Is that
Spice in the Spice band I was in Mount Pleasant, we recorded it, and somewhere there's a recording of it, but it was never released or never really made a record of it.
Oh.
But the Draytons are making a record right now. Mike Cook wrote this song, and he's remotely. We're all putting our parts out.
So, wow, I got in touch with Mike when I was doing a story on the Intruders.
Oh,
So we're
okay.
like Facebook friends now. And I didn't remember, that he was a member of the Draytons.
Oh,
So, yeah, then I said, wow, you played at our wedding.
yeah. And so this one is called Piano Man Blues. I recently released a couple of singles, and this is one of them. So it's on all the streaming services. And this is one I played in my solo show for like the last, I don't know, however long ago I wrote it, 3, 4 years ago, 5 years ago. Because when I play a solo show, it's mostly I'm just a generic entertainer unless I'm invited to a songwriter thing where people want to hear my stuff. So to play originals in the middle of the Beatles and Tom Petty and Tom Waits and all that, you got to play something that grabs people. And I played this and people like it. And plus, it refers to putting money in the tip jar 3 times. So it's usually pretty effective.
Very important.
Yes. Yeah. Piano Man Blues. Is this too loud?
That's good.
Okay. Third table from the bar. Most every Friday night. She asked me to play Ray Charles. I do Georgia on my mind. Her hair hangs straight and long over that tie-dyed shawl. But he always tags along, and he never drops $1 in my jar. My fingers at the keys, I'm sitting on this leather stool, playing the Piano Man Blues. I see it all just like a fly on the wall, playing the Piano Man Blues. That guy she comes here with, he seems all slick and smooth. He shows up on Saturday, always working on his moves. He's gonna break her heart, I can see that roving eye. But I'm just watching from afar, I don't dare make her wise. My fingers at the keys, I'm sitting on this leather stool, playing a Piano Man Blues. I see it all just like a fly on the wall, playing a Piano Man Blues. If you got a request, just let me know. Drop a tip, that's protocol. Do your thing, enjoy the show. Don't mind me, I'm just a fly on the wall. Tonight she's here alone, scotch and ice in hand. She asked for Leonard Cohen, I played Suzanne. She put money in my jar, made damn sure I'd see. And now she's drinking at at the bar, and she's staring straight at me. My fingers got the keys, I'm setting on this little stool, playing a piano and blues. I see it all just like a fly on the wall, playing a piano and blues. Piano and blues.
Yeah, great song.
Piano and blues.
Very cool.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Wow. Well, you've been writing on and off the books and in the music for pretty hard throughout the COVID time, I imagine. I mean, that's yeah.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah.
So, and you recorded a record with Crazy Chestur and got your old buddies back together here, and you gotta give us a little bit of feedback into that. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. When we recorded, ask me that again. What, Crazy Chestur?
Crazy Chestur, yeah.
Yeah.
You got a record out, and you got a new one on the way, right?
We have a record out, and we have plans. We have plans to go back in the studio.
Okay.
It's been, our record was recorded in 2015, so it's been a while.
Yeah.
Crazy Chestur was somewhere in. I kind of had, I always played music, but my ambition waned like in the first part of this century. The first maybe 2000 to 2010, I always played gigs and stuff, but I wasn't terribly ambitious. I didn't do a lot of writing. And then I got the bug to jump back into music again, to jump back in hard to music. And I wanted to start a folk rock band. Play in a rock and roll band, and you're going to play, a Neil Young song and a band song and maybe a Bob Dylan song as sort of a novelty. I wanted to get in the band that just played all that stuff, So I called Jim Gilmore, Rob Clendenning, Mick Stankiewicz at first, who played in Earl Haynes Quintet. It was a jazz thing we had going over in Mount Pleasant for a while. Anyway, I called these guys to start a folk rock band. I want to start this band, call it Crazy Chestur. At the time, I only found one Crazy Chestur band on Google, and they were defunct. But actually, there's probably 14 of them out there. But so that's why
that's a band lyric, obviously.
Yeah, that's where we spell it correctly with the U.
U, yeah, yep.
So anyway, we started, and then before we really got going, Tom Ball said, "Hey, do you need a bass player?" I said, "Yeah," because Mick hadn't showed up. Mick couldn't show up to any of the rehearsals, the first 3 or 4 we had. So Tom Ball joined. He's got the upright bass, which fit in pretty well with the theme. And so we started this band, and then shortly after we started this band, I really jumped back into songwriting hard. And so I wrote all these songs, and we persuaded these guys to learn songs, which is not, I enjoyed. I think there was an interview with Larry lately, and I think it was your podcast, but I've been listening to most every interview. But he talked about why he recorded Soul Shine before the Allman Brothers. That was your
Yeah.
And he said, the coolest thing was, he said, Warren Haynes had this studio quality, broadcast quality recording of Soul Shine, but he couldn't get Greg Allman to listen to it. That did my heart so much good. I mean, here, it's so hard to get somebody to listen to a song, and here's a great player like Warren Haynes, and he can't even get a guy he plays in a band with to listen to a song. I came up with a little joke I might post on Facebook sometime. Songwriter says to recording artist, "Hey, I can't make my root canal appointment tomorrow. Would you go in my place?" And the recording artist said, "I'd rather not." He says, "Okay." And the songwriter says, "Okay, how about listening to a couple of my new songs?" And then the recording artist says, "Well, what time is that root canal?" So anyway, that's how Crazy Chestur got started, and we have a great time. we played, we play some concerts in the park here and there. We play at Rubbles in Mount Pleasant mostly, but we're booked for Scotty's Sandbar.
Yeah, July 1st.
Yeah.
Right. That'll be a lot of fun.
Yeah.
I look forward to it.
Yeah. And we've got some new stuff. We've got some new material that we want to record. We got 3 originals and 1 cover that we want to put out on a digital EP.
And Andy's in the band now.
Right? Andy's in the band, yeah.
So you added a fiddle player.
And and Andy, he's on that record, and he was like an honorary member, and then we just, we persuaded him to join. So yeah, so it's a great combination. I mean, it's an acoustic band except for my electric piano. It's acoustic bass. Jim Gilmore plays a plugged-in acoustic guitar, drums, and a fiddle and piano.
Andrew Rogers, yeah. Wow. Yeah, Andrew brought up a little bit about Crazy Chestur when he was here on his podcast, but I definitely know that you guys have been towing the line for a little bit here, and he, there's always more music in the pipeline, so that's cool.
Yeah.
I know you guys gigged over December Rubbles or something.
Right. We had a gig, 2 gigs last year at Rubbles. After the pandemic, those were our first 2 gigs, and then after that, everybody kind of like the second gig even people were getting scared again, and we had like crowds, but.
And then Larry announced his new album came out, and the lead-off single and video was your song in Arkansas. There, that do you find on your social media pages or anything that you get a lot of attention when stuff like that happens, or is it just kind of just stays there the same?
No, I do get attention. I mean, I get, I try not to. I want to publicize that stuff. When I saw that Joe Bonamassa concert around Thanksgiving, and Larry came out and did 2 songs, and they were both my songs. As you can understand, I got excited.
Oh, I saw those posts. Yeah,
look at that. This guy's, because it's like I said, it's a tough business.
Yeah,
it's a tough business, and to have somebody like on a stage like that, to have those guys playing your song. Now I knew that they had recorded it, because Larry, I knew they were going to record it, and I knew they had recorded it. And actually, I just found out from Larry that they actually made the record, because I was thinking, okay, how musicians are just, we're filled with self-doubt all the time. So, okay, they recorded them, but they're probably going to cut them. They won't make the final record or anything. So when I saw they actually played the songs, I was quite excited. And yeah, I see my website activity has moved up a little bit. It's not, because some people read all that liner notes and they say, oh, who's this guy? What's he all about? He's got 2 songs on this record. And I get a few Facebook requests from people that maybe I don't know who they are, but, they're related to musicians. So
for sure.
Yeah, so there's more activity like that, and, I'm hoping that, I'm always hoping that somebody's going to listen to something else and say, maybe I'll record that song, or some, a song like Mr. Easy. A lot of bands could do that, so,
So you said you're in the midst of songwriting right now again and doing that. So you played us a new song a minute ago. What's on your agenda for 2022, the rest of the year, and maybe into next year?
The rest of the year is, I have a few gigs lined up with Crazy Chestur and Jive at 5. I was invited to join Jive at 5, which is a well-known swing dance and jazz is what they call it. It's a really fun band, and they lost their keyboard player in 2014, and they invited me to join. And they've been around for, I think, almost 30 years, something like that. And we play music festivals. So we play Wheatland and Spring Festival. We're playing Wheatland. We're playing the Buttermilk Jamboree and stuff like that. So
very cool.
I got some gigs there, and working on songs, and hopefully working on some songs with Larry. I'm working on that, because with a record like this, like I said to Larry, I said, you've had all these years to make this record, but you're only going to have a few months to make the next one because you need to follow this one up. So I'm bugging him about, I send him a few songs and say, hey, what do you think about this? And Larry has mentioned some of the old songs that we did, because I used to get Larry and his brothers to come over and do demos, because I was really into writing and really trying to push my stuff in the 90s, the blues stuff. So I would get these really great musicians to come over, and we'd record 4 songs, and 4 or 5 songs, and so I have all these old demos. Now, Mr. Easy was a demo, and then Arkansas was a demo that we did in 2015. I did that over at Michael Crittenden's studio in Grand Rapids. I got Larry and his brother Steve to come over, and we recorded 3 songs, and one of them was Arkansas. Yeah, which I don't know if you saw that, but Arkansas was a dream. I dreamed that song.
Oh, really?
I dreamed that I called, this was like 2014, 2015, I dreamed that I called Larry up. He was in the middle of a rehearsal, and I could see him. You know how dreams are, you can do anything. So I could see him, and he was in his old house on Weber Street in Saginaw where we used to rehearse, and he was standing up on the landing playing guitar. He said, I'm in the middle of rehearsal, man. And but he's talking on the phone, and he's still playing and singing. He's singing this song, I was born in Arkansas, feeding hogs and baling straw. And in my dream, I thought, oh man, I wish I wrote that song. And I jumped up. It was like 4 in the morning. I grabbed a piece of paper. I started writing down words. And then, a week or so later, I put together a little demo and I sent it to Larry, and he liked it. And then, several months later, we went and did a demo of it. And of course, he changed the music all around and added some words. So it is really a co-write.
Yeah.
That came to me in a dream, which makes it more special to see it on a record.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Very cool.
And just one little note on the co-write thing was Mr. Easy. Larry, I saw it in Grand Rapids, and he introduced the song, and he said, and this was easy because he said Charlie wrote all the words, and all I had to do was put some music to it and make it bounce. Well, Larry put 2 words in there, and they're the coolest 2 words in the whole song, because I wrote the line, sometimes I sleep out on the highway curled up inside a ditch, and Larry made it, sometimes I sleep out on the highway curled up like a fat snake in a ditch. And everybody's like, fat snake. My friend from Colorado's called me up. Who wrote that line about fat snake? I said, man, I wrote the whole damn song except for those 2 words. Anyway. Yeah.
Well, thank you, Charlie. Thank you for coming to our show, the music. Thank you for all the years of entertainment. I mean, man, you've got Michigan history wrapped around your thumb, man. It's pretty cool. And you got a future ahead of you in your writing. You got books coming, and you got a website that we could promote?
I do. I do have a website. It's charliewalmsley.com.
Excellent.
And, you can find all kinds of stuff there. Yeah.
And your show dates go up there, probably, as well as social media?
Schedule. I have, there's schedule, there's bio, there's the record store, which is soon going to be Books and Record Store. I'm just having some changes made, so I'm going to start selling books directly from my website. And there's some videos, which are just links to YouTube videos, and a lot of them are just songs, but some of them are videos. And yeah. So. Well,
we look forward to what the future brings for you, and we hope to hear you more on the radio like we have been Larry's stuff. So maybe we'll hear some crazy Chestur too. So
hey, thanks a lot, Scott. I really appreciate this. This has been fun. I hope you guys all had fun.
Oh, we did.
It was great, Charlie. Thanks for coming on.
You do all the talk. I bet.
All right.
Thanks a lot.
The MMHP is hosted on Apple, Spotify, YouTube, and our own Libsyn podcast site. You can also search MMHP989 on Facebook for up-to-the-minute information, as well as both Dr. J and Sir Fred's album picks of the week, posted every weekend. You can connect with Scott on the web at scottbakermusic.com, Dr. J at MichiganRock'n'RollLegends.com, Sir Fred at fredrife.com. Brought to you by Michigan rock and roll legends located both inside the Bay County Historical Museum on Washington Avenue, as well as Scotty's Sandbar on Evergreen Drive at the Bay City Middle Grounds.
On behalf of the hosts, Gary Dr. J. Johnson, Sir Fred Rife, archivist and videographer Mike Beatty, and myself, this podcast wouldn't be here without Studio 163's Alan Garcia, the voice of MMHP, Mr. Eddie Switek, all of our guests, and you, the listeners.
You've been listening to the MMHP and the 989. From all of us at the podcast, we want to thank you for tuning in.
How did you come up with Frank Waldmere?
My middle name is Francis.
Oh.
And Walt Meyer